Perfect. Okay, thank you. So welcome. My name is Sheila Rhodes. I have been on the planning committee for the ECOM conference. And as Laura knows, this planning has gone on for a couple of years because it should have been over a year ago. So welcome to our conference and welcome to our first session this afternoon. And you are presently in the room for, just to make sure you're in the right room, the water game, outdoor ecological simulation games as sparks for environmental inquiry and into action. So that's the session that you are attending right now. Just want to make sure that everybody is in the right room because I know that we had a little glitch this afternoon with the internet in the Toronto School Board. So thank you for coming this afternoon and welcome to the ECOM conference. These are some of our sponsors for our conference. So as always, we like to start our sessions with the land acknowledgement. And realizing that people are coming in from many parts of not only Canada, but also from other countries we see. If you would like to indicate in the chat box what territory you're from, where, what nation you're situated on, that would be really helpful just to get a sense of where people are coming from. Laura and I were chatting earlier that when we do land acknowledgements, we tend to focus it on the territory or the First Nations community where we reside. And I actually live in Mississauga, which is very close to this territory. So the land acknowledgement that we're going to read today is one that acknowledges that the conference was intended to take place in the Toronto area. So we're using the land acknowledgement for this particular area. We acknowledge the traditional territory upon which the conference is being hosted. For many thousands of years, the Huron-Wendat and the Petun First Nations, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, the Seneca, and most recently, the Mississaugas of the Credit, have sought to walk gently on this land. This territory is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit, as well as the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the lands and resources around the Great Lakes. This acknowledgement signals our desire to seek a new relationship with the original peoples of this land, one based on honor and deep respect, and it is a starting point to remind us all to enact this work in our personal and professional lives. So thank you for our land acknowledgement. Just a few things before I turn it over to Jennifer. We are going to have the chat box open and we can have some questions at the end if you would like that. And Jennifer has put in a link in the Google chat box that you can use as well for her presentation as well. So I just want to introduce Jennifer and welcome you to our conference today. As we said, this is the first workshop. So Jennifer, and I've been following Jennifer on Twitter for a while. So Jennifer has taught grades JK to 8 and at an outdoor education centers. She has facilitated environmental and outdoor AQ courses since 2001. Jennifer has an HBA in Environmental and Indigenous Studies from Trent University. In 2018, she won Natural Curiosity's Edward Bertinsky's Award for Excellence in Environmental Education for leading her primary division in a water inquiry with an Indigenous perspectives. So we welcome Jennifer and all of our delegates to the session. And I will be taking notes, if people have things they want to put in the chat box, we will try and address those at the end of the session. And Jennifer is very kindly, as I said, shared her session. So I am going to turn off my mic and turn it over to Jennifer. So welcome, Jennifer.
Happy Earth Day, everyone. Thank you so much for attending my water workshop today and for coming to ECOM. It looks like we have an international attendance. That's very, very exciting. This is a picture of me kayaking on Lake Simcoe, my closest water source and source of drinking water. And okay, so I can see now that, all right, I'm just going to hide pictures so I can see everything. So happy Earth Day. Often when we see a picture of the Earth from space, we see land. We see Africa, North America, but this is a Pacific Ocean view on Google Earth. And you can see that half our Earth physically is water. I didn't do anything to manipulate this picture. So oceans cover over 70% of Earth's surface, but as we know, less than 1% of Earth's water is available fresh water. And you are at least over 60% water. So we're all connected by water and the water cycle. Normally we do a land acknowledgement, and I would like to acknowledge that I'm on the Williams Treaty, And our closest partner in education is the Chippewa of Georgina Island First Nation, which is an island on Lake Simcoe, again, where we have our drinking water. And I also want to acknowledge the social justice issue in my area, where Georgina Island has been on a boil water advisory for over 10 years, as are many, many First Nations in Canada, which is an interesting fact because we are the country with the largest source of fresh drinking water in the world. So in my presentation, there are many live links, and I've hopefully made the presentation one that is shareable to anybody on the planet. And it's really important that you, if you want to dive deeper into this presentation, that you click on all kinds of links that I put into the presentation, such as in this one, the Assembly of First Nations Honoring Water page, and the importance of their understanding that water is alive, water is sacred, and that it is important to develop that relationship of respect and reciprocity. And I have learned that from the Aboriginal teachers that have come to my school, with whom I have formed friendships with as a settler on this land and on this water. I am a non-Indigenous person. Okay, so before I continue, this slide shows up in two places on my presentation, one at the beginning, one at the end. And this is a provincial park, Sybil Point Provincial Park, very close to me. It's a picture of the beach very recently. And when I went on a very early morning walk, and what you can do is click on the link, it will take you to a Jamboard where you can put a Post-it note. I'm calling it a beach towel. So instead of a parking lot, I invite you to come to the beach, and please put on your ideas, questions, and we're going to come back to it at the end. Okay, so I have a hard time multitasking and in Zooms and answering questions right away in the body of the presentation, but I promise I will leave back to it at the end. Okay, thank you so much. All right, let's get started. So one of the philosophies about water, and I really wanted to start with emotional and mental health, because of the situation we've been in for the last year and a half. And I wanted to share that one of the philosophies that has helped me greatly over the last year is Bruce Lee's philosophy on the nature of water and his idea to be more water. And if you'd like to read more about his philosophy, you can click on Maria Popova's Brain Pickings article. She has a wonderful blog about Bruce Lee's idea of water and how he used water in his life to not get stuck and to be flexible and to adapt, like the nature of water. And I'm a science teacher, so I thought, how do we take this metaphor and how do we use it to help us emotionally, but also to help our students? So I was thinking about how ice is really solid and rigid, and yes, it stays afloat until it melts, but it's also very easily breakable. And so I thought about the solid as being this sort of rigid traditional way of teaching, that if we get stuck like that, we're going to have difficulties in our teaching. But if we go into this sort of ephemeral form of gas, and I liken this metaphor to completely online, where there's a lot of space in between. It's that ether world, right? Where our students feel like they're a little bit lost out in space somewhere. So I think that when I teach, I like to see myself and personally like liquid. I'm taking the shape of the container so that I can go from, this idea of being face to face, and then I can pivot, pardon the word, I know it's overused, but I can change form to online. And I'm not saying that it's easy. It has not been an easy year for me, as I'm sure it has been a very challenging year for you. But I hope that this idea of be like water will help you to be flexible. Water is also the universal solvent. So it's this idea that we can take in other ideas and it can sort of become an ocean of our thoughts. And, this morning I go on early morning walks, and I was listening to the podcast with Tara Brock, who is the author of Radical Compassion and True Refuge. She's a psychologist and a Buddhist teacher. And she was talking about how when we trust that we are the ocean, we're not afraid of the waves. So we can identify with that drop of water, that moment in time. We could even identify with the wave of emotion, the fear, the loneliness, the anxiety that we've all experienced this year and continue to experience. But we can begin to trust that we're the ocean. And I think those are lessons that we can share with our students. So that's my philosophy on water that I'm going to start with, and I hope it helps in some way. So now I'm going to talk about what has been at least a 20-year journey in environmental and outdoor education, with focusing on programming for water specifically. So you can see on the left that there is a picture of my daughter when she was 5. She's now 22, and her friend. And this is from an article that I published in Green Teacher called The Water Game. When you click on it in real time, on your own time, when you click on it, you're going to get a link to Teachers Pay Teachers for a free download of my book called Eco Games. And what I have done with Eco Games is adapt programs. There are 15 games, and they're hopefully adaptable for any school, I hope, on the planet, even if it's tarmac and built only, because this is an urban conference. And so I'm very cognizant of working at field centers, and I've worked at field centers for, I worked there for 7 years, from 2001 to 2008, and they're beautiful. But then you go back to school and it's tarmac and maybe the odd basketball pole. And so I created Eco Games so that there are 15 of them. They are related to the Common Core in the United States, to the Ontario curriculum. You can adapt them to your curriculum basically around the world, because water is universal. So the idea is really, you set up a scavenger hunt and you have game signs related to the water forms. Children, you might create a schoolyard map, and there are instructions in the manual that you could get a free download. And then the students go out and they do a form of orienteering, finding the game cards. Now, the game cards have on them Morse code symbols, dots and dashes, for all of us artistically uninclined people. So the students draw their dots and dashes, and then when they have all of them, they come back and they decode them using the Morse code, and they come up with a secret environmental message, which I'm not going to tell you what it is. You have to download the book. It's free. Everything's free. Everything that I am giving you is free. Okay. And why is it free? I'm a paid full-time teacher, and I teach additional qualification courses. I feel very blessed and privileged to have good sources of income. And so my way of giving back to people through the pandemic and in the last couple of years has been a philosophy of sharing. I'm also getting close to the end of my career, and I very intentionally want to share as much as I can with my experience as an environmental and outdoor educators, environmental and outdoor educator. Okay, so this is really what this workshop was originally intended to be about, was how to set up online games to do with, schoolyard games or field center games to do with water. So I hope that you'll download Eco Games, take a good look at it. This is a poem I wrote in 2001 that you can put on the back of the game card, and it's just easy to run through the photocopier. It's all there for you if you click on the link. And I'm happy to answer questions about it at the end of this presentation, but I am going to move on. Okay, so after I worked at outdoor ed centers, I then went back into a regular school, and I've been a grade 2 teacher at Lakeside Public School in Keswick, York Region District School Board for 7 years. My principal recognized that I had a bit of skills in outdoor and environmental education. And so in 2017, she said, Jen, I want to do a big professional learning collaborative. What do you think it should be on? And I had been thinking about this, and I said, a water inquiry. This was in 2017, but we didn't know really how to proceed. Then I went to the release of Natural Curiosity 2nd edition, and I'm so glad I did. This is an incredible mentor text. Yes, I am putting in a plug for Natural Curiosity too. Okay. When you open this book up, it has 3 tenets. It has how to do an environmental inquiry with an Indigenous perspective, how to do an inquiry with an inquiry approach, and how to build knowledge within your staff. So I'm in year 26 of teaching. And I can honestly say that professional learning collaboratives within your staff, when you have an administrator who somehow manages to get you release time in the school day, is the best form of professional learning. And I'm working on my master's right now. And with the research I've done, I can honestly say that if you have the opportunity to professional learning collaborative, then go for it within your school. I see what we are doing right now as a professional learning collaborative, and I teach AQs. And so everything that I've been doing lately, I'm trying to see with that focus of a PLC. Okay. So basically the picture on the right is the whole process, inquiry process of a professional learning collaborative that I led at my school over the course of 2016, 2017. And the first thing we did was come up with a common language using natural curiosity. So we spent time reading the book, talking about the book, and then we embarked on this journey. Interestingly enough, this was with the primary staff, the entire primary staff, and the primary staff really wanted to focus on water abroad. Water issues around the world are really important, but it was very, very important to me to focus people's attention on the Indigenous social justice issues right within our own community and our own source of drinking water. On the table right now, we have something called the Upper York Region Sewage Solution, where there's a proposal to dump treated sewage water into Lake Simcoe of enormous proportions. And the Chippewa Georgina Island and many, many residents are vehemently opposed to this. Lake Simcoe already has a lot of stress on it. And so adding that kind of stress to the lake is something that we really wanted the entire community to be a part of. So we did things that a lot of other people are starting to do with water inquiries. We accessed our First Nations, Métis, and Inuit consultant, and she connected with people in the community who came to our school, who sang water songs with us, who taught us about Josephine Mandman. Our students made little copper pot necklaces. We did water walks to the lake. There is also within Natural Curiosity a case study of how to do a water inquiry. So it really was a beautiful place to start. We then invited parents into the community, and we had an entire day celebrating water in our classrooms and outside. Now, I have connected a little movie about you now, but again, on your own time, if you're interested, you can take a look at the movie. And Tawana Brooks, our First Nations consultant, she and I presented on this at a Quest conference, and I presented on it at Eco Justice at TDSB and Oise Eco Schools. So the sharing what you've done with these sorts of inquiries is also, I think, really important, even if you're just tweeting out what you're doing. But this is, a part of it with me presenting right now to share what I've done in order to encourage other people to do this sort of work. Okay, so again, I'll take any questions on the professional learning inquiry on the water, on the professional learning collaborative on the water inquiry at the end. And yes, thank you to Natural Curiosity. We did win the National Grand Prize, the Edward Bertinsky Award for this inquiry in 2018, which we're really, really honored. And that came with some money. And the following year, we rolled it into a project called Math on the Land. And that's a whole other workshop. Tawana and I wrote an article about that for ETFO Voice, and I'm happy to link that or talk about that at another time, where we focused on the Indigenous perspective of math through the seasons outside in our own schoolyard. Okay, so I'm going to continue on with water. All right, so fast forward to the spring of 2020, the global pandemic, and doing the first pivot to online learning, which I had to do too. Again, being like water, yeah, I was terrified, but I embraced this sort of wave that a lot of people embraced, the virtual choice board. Okay, so I created in July a website with virtual choice boards that match each game in the Eco Games. So there are 15 in total. I've done 14 of them, and I released the Planet Earth game a few days ago in time for Earth Day. And there are 2 choice boards that are directly related to water. There are actually 4 about water because there's also a wetlands choice board to do with the wetlands game and an oceans choice board to do with the oceans game. But I'm going to speak specifically about the water form choice board. So here it is. And this one is really for primary junior. So if you click on the links, and again, you can do this in real time. Okay, so what you'll do is you'll get to my Eco Inquiry website, and then it will take you to this choice board with the links. So when you're clicking on the links, you'll see that they're really for primary students to learn about basic science of what is the water cycle, and learning more about the science of 3 states of water and water forms, but also there is that Indigenous perspective. So there's a link to Josephine Mandman's Water Walker site where they can learn the Nibi water song. There's connections to Autumn Peltier, our water warrior, who opened up the United Nations Decade for Action on Water Sustainability on March 22nd, 2018. And she's an incredible ambassador for water for First Nations and for all of Canada. She's only 16. She's an incredible, incredible role model. Anyway, so when you click on this choice board, every picture will take you to another resource, okay? And I vetted the resources, but I also wrote an article that was published in the summer edition of Green Teacher Magazine for you to be able to make your own choice boards. So you can't edit the original choice board that I gave you. You have to have a Gmail account, and then you make a copy, and then you can start manipulating the links. You don't have to use the links that I've created. Also, it's really fun to change the Bitmoji. You'll see on Eco Inquiry that the Bitmojis don't all look like me. I have hired a consultant to ensure that I have representation from the Black, Indigenous, and people of color community, so that I have a really high diversity and representation. And this Eco Inquiry website is only 9 months old, and I've had over 50,000 hits from 90 countries on the planet, and a lot of pretty good feedback. So I feel like I'm trying to make it as international as possible. It is limited to English. I speak French very badly, but there are some resources on there that are linked to French. And when I go on to the next one, and this particular resources, there are resources in Cree. So this water systems choice board, I'm just gonna go back for a second. In particular in Ontario, water is first introduced in a big way in the life systems strand in our science curriculum in grade 2, water and the environment, okay? But it can also be connected to energy in our lives, to grade 4 habitats, to plants. When it comes up again very explicitly is grade 8 in water systems. And so I created a more intermediate and even a senior level choice board. And the links on here for all of the intermediate teachers that are participating today, the links are related to things like watersheds and a whole systems approach to water. So the Canadian Wildlife Federation link is about rivers to oceans, okay? And then there are youth-led organizations that are connected to cleaning up water, that sort of thing. So when you click on the links, you'll see, for example, the ocean cleanup, where a 22-year-old, and his name, of course, is going to skip my mind, but you'll click on it and see a 22-year-old created technology for cleaning up these islands of plastic that we have floating in the oceans and in our rivers. Let's see. So there are lots of links on there for junior and intermediate students. So okay, there's the Jamboard for you to add your ideas. We're going to go over there in a couple minutes, and I'm going to open it up to questions in about 5 minutes. Okay, on this slide, again, you have the slideshow. I just want to go around and explain what each one of these links are. So the one with me waving, the little Bitmoji of me waving, and if you haven't gotten onto the Bitmoji craze with choice boards, I encourage you to do that. They're an awful lot of fun. So this is the link to my Eco Inquiry website. Oops, and I have just lost now my presentation. Oh, yay. So when you go onto the Eco Inquiry website, you'll see that you can click onto the water form game that I was just speaking about, okay? And you can click onto the water systems game, okay? And also at the bottom of every game, I'll just show you this for a second. So when you click on the picture, it's going to take you to a Google slide where you make a copy, and then you can use the links. You can put it right directly into your Google Classroom. Again, this is all free, or you can change the links and add them up or change them as you see fit, okay? There's a link to the Eco Game download on Teachers Pay Teachers, again, for free. And here's an example of the game sign for the water systems game. They're nautical flags. And then finally, I have some book suggestions, okay? Now, to explain to you how to set up the eco games in your own schoolyard, I've created YouTube videos. So if you just click on these videos, there's 2 minutes. They're both each about 2 minutes, and they're explanations, deeper explanations for how to set up the games in your schoolyard. But if you're pivoting to online, then be like water, change form, and move on to the choice boards, okay? I might as well just click my links in my own website. I think maybe that's more helpful. So this is the article on, oh, and maybe it isn't going to be helpful. This is the free article in Green Teacher Magazine on how to create your own choice boards, okay? And this link is in the slideshow. And I can't actually, I'm having a hard time getting back to my own, oh, I can't see my own screen. Oh, perfect. And
right. Jennifer, you can try stop sharing and then sharing again.
Okay, great. So thank you. So when I go onto this, well, the problem is that my tab is covered by the controls at the top.
You can drag it, you can drag that black bar, you can just drag it down a little bit. You should be able to then see your link.
How do I drag it? Oh, I see it. Oh, that's brilliant. Okay, great. Let me get back to my own presentation. And that was sort of freaking me out. Okay, so I'm just going to get back to my own presentation. Perfect. Am I back on with the maple syrup bucket?
Yeah.
Bucket?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so when we go to this, so all right, so then you can see what the website looks like. The Eco Games is the free download on Teachers Pay Teachers for the manual on how to set up Eco Games. It's got game cards, game signs. There's a really clear explanation for how to connect it to mapping and sense of place. And there's a page on my website with further information about mapping and sense of place. When you click on this book selection for primary students, directly to the water form game, the one on the right with the books will take you to the water systems game for intermediate and senior students. And then the picture in the middle where it looks like a really busy campsite with a bunch of animals in it will take you to the free article in Green Teacher. Okay, now something I've been having an awful lot of fun doing as well is I started creating YouTube videos. And so Eco Inquiry, which is my website, it has also a connected YouTube channel, and there are about 25 videos on there with a number of them related to water. So if you click on this picture, you'll get to my YouTube channel, and I invite you to try and take little videos that spark natural inquiry. I found that this is a way to bring the outdoors into my classroom. There's this challenge of how do we continue to bring outdoor and environmental education into our online learning environment. And so I found that when I'm out walking, I spend a lot of time outside. It clears my head. I spend a lot of time kayaking, walking. But if there's, I spot a pileated woodpecker up in the tree, or I see something interesting, happening in the water, I take a quick video and then I upload it onto my YouTube channel, and it's something for me to share with my students. I live on a river, so you'll see that there are pictures of a snapping turtle laying eggs in my yard. I watch a couple of fox dens, so when the kits come out, I take little videos, and they're kind of cheesy. I'm using this sort of little quiet voice, but I don't give answers. My point is to give questions that spark greater natural inquiry. On the right with the little planet, you will see that there's an article to there's a link to another article I wrote for Green Teacher magazine this fall. And it's basically my thoughts about how to strengthen outdoor education at any school. I'm hoping at any school, with 10 high yield iterative strategies. And I could do a whole other presentation on that. I'm not going to, but that article requires a subscription to Green Teacher. However, Ian Shanahan has said that if he's the editor of Green Teacher magazine, that it's my article, I'm allowed to share it far and wide. So I have the PDF full version. And if you would like that full version, just DM me or connect with me and on Twitter and I'm going to give you my contact information next. Okay, so let's go on to the last slide. The last slide here is the contact information for me, and I'm just going to try to move this toolbar back up. So I promise, you follow me, I'll follow you. I found in the last year developing a professional learning network on Twitter and through conferences has just actually one of the things that's kept me mentally and emotionally healthy. Of course, as we know, Twitter is a great way to doom scroll, but it's also a good way to stay connected. So on Twitter, I have two identities. On Twitter, I am myself at Jennifer Barron 7. You can email me at jennifer.barron@rogers.com if, for example, you want that full article on the 10 strategies for outdoor education at your schoolyard. And you can follow me also on Twitter and Instagram at Eco Inquiry, and there's the link to my website, which I hope has useful tools for you. I'm going to go back just 1 second to here, and I actually would kind of like to link to my YouTube channel so that you can see what I'm talking about. I'm not going to play the first video. I just will take it off for a moment. But my hope is that you can see that Eco Inquiry has a YouTube channel where I have all kinds of very, very short videos with little questions for the students to spark that natural inquiry. And my hope is that this will allow students to connect to nature, and then to connect to nature, and then to care, and then to take action. So my own personal relationship to water is that, of course, I am water. I drink water every day, but also that I'm a huge swimmer. Pre-pandemic, I swim, or I try to swim pretty much every day. And that is my goal as soon as the lake is warm enough, is to get back in there and swim again, because of course the local pools are closed down. So that is, I've been talking for a half an hour straight, and I would like to go back to the beach, where I'm really hoping that there are some questions and ideas on the Jamboard. So I'm going to click on it and see if that takes us to the Jamboard. And like I said, I'm hoping there are some questions and ideas on the beach mat. Not yet, but that's okay. So maybe we could also open, I'll go back to here and see if there are any questions or comments on the chat. I'm also hoping that people might be willing to share their own stories of what they've been doing for a water inquiry in their own educational settings. So I'm going to pause there and see if we can get some participants. I'm hoping maybe rather than me facilitating this part, is there a possibility, Sheila, that you could facilitate this, because I can't see.
Jennifer, you could stop sharing your screen and then all of us could come up and then
Oh, perfect. Okay, great.
And
there
Sheila,
we
I will
go.
let you facilitate this.
Hi, Hillary. How are you?
I'm great, Jen. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, so I can see that we have about 20 people in the room, and I'm going to zip over to the chat and just take a look and see if there are any questions. Okay, so what I can do is go back to sharing, and I'm going to, people have asked how do we get to the Eco Games manual? So I'm going to go back to that and talk about that for just a few more moments. So when you go to, let's see, when you go to Eco Games, you can, I've put up the link to the Eco Games manual in many, many places. Okay, so you just click on the picture and it's going to bring you over to Teachers Pay Teachers. When you click on that, you can download. Okay, and it's a pretty big download, but like I said, it's free, and that will take you to all of the games. I'm wondering how long it could take a while to download here. So I'm not actually going to download it right now. Okay, and I'm going to go back onto stop share and see if there are any other questions. They're absolutely, so someone has asked, are some of these games adaptable for kindergarten students? Absolutely. I've taught kindergarten a number of times as a science Rotary teacher and as a homeroom kindergarten teacher. And the first three, so I'm going to take you back to the, I'm going to take you back to the Eco Games website. So you can see all of the menu. I would say that the bird game, the insect game, the fish game, the reptiles and amphibians game, and the water form game are all for our early years, FDK to grade 3. So you could take any of those games and you can adapt them in many, many ways. So one of the things you could do is just have your scavenger hunt happen in the kindergarten outdoor play area. We have a pretty small kindergarten play area for a large amount of students, and you could you can put the game signs up anywhere that's at eye height for the students. If you want to make it slightly more difficult, put them down a little bit lower. Now the game signs are about this big. And I'm trying to think if I have a copy of my manual sitting here somewhere. Anyway, the game signs are about that big, and I just use duct tape to tape them to poles or to the school wall. So I've created them so that they're really easily adaptable for urban school environments. And then if we move on to the wildflower game and the tree game, that's really for grade 3 and grade 4 with plants. And the wildflower game has links to the Wildflowers of Canada. Okay, the Oceans game and the Rock Cycle game and Endangered Species game is also really for grade 4 habitats, grade 6 biodiversity if you're an Ontario teacher, but you can adapt it depending on what your curriculum is like, where you teach. The energy game and the wetlands game and the water systems game is really getting into that systems thinking. The Planet Earth game is specifically to get students into learning more about youth-led environmental groups, of which there are so many. I mean, I wrote these eco games in 2005, 16 years later, you know, with youth-led climate action, there's so many youth environmental games or organizations. So this website is really adaptable for FDK, I hope all the way to grade 12. And also, I hope it inspires teacher candidates. I mentor a teacher candidate and she's taking a look at this, and she's created now her own choice boards because, like I said, each game has a related choice board. So for example, if we were to go on to the oceans game, which is very much related to water, you can see that you can adapt this to from kindergarten all the way to grade 12, putting in your own links and your own ideas on the choice board. Okay. All right, I'm going to go to stop share again and just see if there are any other questions. Okay, so the beach mat is set to view only. Maybe that's why people aren't on it, but I'm not sure if I can change that right this second. Oh, hold on. Oh no, I see there are a lot of people on it. Hold on, let me just give you editing capability. Change view. Oh, it is set to view only. I apologize. All right, done. So now I'm very curious to see if you can write on it. If people could just refresh that screen, and I would really love to see or hear ideas of what other people are doing. So I'm really hoping that this workshop becomes more interactive, and if there's anybody willing to take a risk and where's my, oh, here we go, to take a risk and share what they've been doing. Is there anyone that would be willing to do that?
Hi, it's Sheila here. I'm just going to pop in because your comment about teacher candidates. I work in a faculty of education in Ontario, and resources like this are amazing for our students right now because they're really, you know, they're still learning the curriculum, obviously, and they're still trying to learn and about inquiry, because inquiry is something that we're really trying to focus on in Ontario. So having a resource like this is amazing for them. So on behalf of people who work in faculties of education, Jennifer, we want to thank you because it really is an excellent tool, particularly, you know, with this virtual world and trying to find ways that we can encourage students and families to get outside. So I just put that little plug in that I certainly share it with our teacher candidates as well.
Excellent, thank you. And I'm just realizing, I think there's a possibility my video might have been off that whole time. So if you were just looking at me kayaking, I apologize for that as well. Is there anybody else who's willing to share? I did put the link to the beach mat up, and I'm hoping that I can see Bonnie has said, nope, she's still locked out. Hi, Bonnie, but I'm hoping that people can click on that and maybe try to put some things up. So I'm curious, where are you teaching? How are you teaching, online or virtual? And what sort of things are you looking for? Is there anything else that I can help you with in the 15 minutes or so that we have left?
Feel free to jump on the microphone as well if you're wanting to share, or in the chat box, either one.
Okay, I'll wait for 1 minute, and if people don't want to share, there's certainly a lot more I can keep going and talking about. Okay, I can continue to share the screen then. I've got a lot to present, but I wanted to leave room. But I also am cognizant that people are here and they're here for the hour, and there's a lot more that I can continue to present. So Sheila, is it okay to just keep going then, do you think?
Yeah, sure, maybe another 10 minutes or so, that'd be fine.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to here, and great. It looks like people are populating the Jamboard. So I'm just going to take a look at this for a moment. I'm thinking of, I'm just gonna go through them kind of round the clock. I'm a secondary teacher at Forest Valley Outdoor Ed Center in the TDSB, and I'm looking for secondary activities. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the presentation for a moment. Sorry, I'm just seeing as I'm able to go all over the place, it appears as a presenter. So when you go back to eco-inquiry, I would say that you should, if you're looking for, again, primary junior activities, a bird game, insect, fish, reptiles, amphibians, water, wildflower, tree, they would be primary junior. I designed it so that you really start getting into that systems thinking, that intermediate, junior, intermediate, senior level thinking with oceans, endangered species, and then very much with energy, wetlands, water systems, planet Earth. And by the end of May, I will put up a climate action 1. So you can take the games and create them for Hillside, but you could also take the virtual choice boards and adapt them to meet your needs if you're supporting programs online this spring. So I hope that that helps. If you want to know more, please just put your mic on and enter the conversation. It was a little bit more interactive. Okay, someone has said, let's see. We teach children pond dipping in bubbled groups. We give them flow chart sheets so they can catch a bug. Then they can follow the flow chart and find the creature of their own. Love it. So if you go to the wetlands ecosystem game, you will see that the pictures in that game are macro invertebrates, benthic macro invertebrates. And so there's pictures of all those kinds of things you're going to find in your dip net. And the kids can, play the game, go dip netting. It would really, really complement that program. So at the Outdoor Ed Center that I worked at, we also went pond dipping. But so that's the kind of thing that you could do in the morning for the students to understand what the insects are, and then go race around and play the game at your field center in the afternoon. So again, any additional pond related activities would be appreciated. Check out the wetlands game. It's got a lot of resources, and the choice board, a lot of resources related to not just ponds, but all different kinds of wetlands. Okay, I'm trying to incorporate specific social justice into lessons and for students, looking for more about how to empower them. That is the intention of Eco-Inquiry, my website. So really, we talk about no trauma before, I think it used to be grade 12. Honestly, now children with social media are learning about the state of the world and seeing images at a much younger age. And we see them dealing with eco-anxiety, this fear that, and I feel it too. I felt it when I was a small child. And we also see the inequities in Black communities and in Indigenous communities. And so the current aspect of the environmental movement needing to be intersectional and related to social justice is imperative. I follow intersectionalenvironmentalism.com, and there are wonderful, wonderful resources on there. So I have linked that website on the Planet Earth game, and it's really geared to intermediate students. And because all of the links on the Planet Earth game, if I can just go there for 1 second. So all of the links on the Planet Earth game, if you go to that choice board, every single image connects to a youth-led environmental organization. And I've tried to vet and find youth-led organizations that are as diverse, culturally diverse and representative as possible. So again, feel free to change the links when you take this choice board and make a copy and make it your own. But know that I've put in a fair amount of work trying to find youth-led environmental groups. Okay, Bonnie, thank you so much for telling me that I didn't have the sharing on properly, because now this is just, I can see that we're really populating this and there's wonderful things going on. All right,
Can I add in that through the ecom, we did a webinar both in English and in French on strategies that educators can use at all levels to help deal with eco-anxiety with kids when facing.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. In the frequently asked questions on eco inquiry, there's one page just related to frequently asked questions. And I just wanted to say that I've listed a number of resources in French. Okay, so for those of you working in French immersion or French schools, there are resources in French. But I also want to say that I teach an environmental education AQ for the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario. I'm teaching it right now. And this course this year, more than any other time, we're talking about the importance of getting outside and the connection to our mental and emotional health. And that's why I started this presentation with the link to, our reciprocal and respectful relationship towards water from an Indigenous knowledge perspective, from Bruce Lee's perspective of be like water. If you can share that metaphor with your students, perhaps it will be helpful to them. Every single one of us is 60% water. Our planet is over 70% water. We are water. We are all connected with water. I'm not an overly religious person, definitely. I come at things from a scientific and secular perspective, but even from that perspective, we're all connected through water. And I also think Tara Brach's philosophy of, practice on thinking that of being like the ocean so you can ride the waves is just a beautiful philosophy to help us get through and build resiliency in really, really difficult times. Okay, so I'm going to go to another sticky. Canadian Rockies Youth Network is hosting an online student-led conference and will engage in a water walk as part of it. That's wonderful. And if I can just put a plug into Water Walkers, which is that new website, because it's been refashioned. It is linked in both the water form game and the water systems game. Just click around on the links. Walking for your watershed can be done anywhere. It's so true. So the water systems game is all about understanding our watersheds. And if you click on the map of Canada, you'll go to an amazing interactive website about Canadian watersheds. I'm thinking of making the yellow sticky. I'm thinking of making a website to compile all the different great outdoor ed resources that are out there. So we'll definitely be including this. Yay, thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you, Jackson. Doing some serious windowsill science as kids can't get out. It's so true. So if we can look out the window and we're teaching a water unit, we can see clouds, we can see weather changing with rain. Today where I was, I could see snow the last couple of days, many times. So that connecting to water through condensation on the windowsill, it definitely is really, really hard for students. Putting up images of open water and having webcams to water, looking at the eco inquiry videos that I've linked where there's some really fun water videos on there, especially the ice coming off Lake Simcoe. These are ways that we can help bring the outdoors into our online learning environment. And looking at pictures of openness, of that open lake, that open water, there's been some research done around that also, less. So I'm hoping that will be helpful for you and your students. So it looks like, okay, here we go. Just had some students do homework by getting outside with their family and looking for signs of nature in spring. It was a good point for discussion. Absolutely. Anytime we can connect families and all of these things that I presented, I want to implore that it's working within COVID protocols, COVID guidelines for safety within your area at this time. So I teach primary students and I have to be cognizant that I need to say to them when you're going for a walk with your families. So I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate that is homework and asynchronous time. Okay, so I'm going to stop there and stop sharing and take a look at the chat for a moment. It looks like there's some wonderful things going on in the chat. And I'm wondering if there's anything anybody wants to say in the last few minutes, opening it up to other people. Oh, look at these wonderful resources that are coming up now. This is amazing. Sheila, Laura, do you keep the chat? Is that going to be accessible later for people? Because I haven't had time to read everything, and I'm curious if there's a way that I can read it later.
I'm sure there's a way.
Yeah,
I don't know how to do it personally.
Here's
But we can-
what you need to do.
Oh,
On the
Bonnie, you
bottom
jumped in
of
on
the
me.
chat, on the bottom of the chat, it says to, and then everyone, and then it says file, and then there's 3 dots. And everyone can individually save all the things that are in the chat so that you can read through it later.
Oh, I love it. I just did that. I've never done that before. That is brilliant.
That's why we invite people like Bonnie to help out. Thank you, Bonnie.
Thanks, Bonnie.
I
You
always
can,
love
come
it.
to you can come to my free conference next weekend. It'll be
That's right.
fine.
So,
Why don't you put a link to it in the chat, and then I'll save that.
Yes, I will.
for those of you who are wondering why we're having these side conversations, you'll if you haven't discovered yet, people in environmental education are passionate about what we do, and many of us know each other and have known each other for a long time. So Bonnie and I have taught workshops together many times. So just looking at the time, Jennifer. So I just on behalf of Ecom, I want to thank you so much for this session. I'm writing all these notes down because I'm actually doing this session with my teacher candidates next week. So you've given me some other ideas to share with them. But some of the topics that came up this afternoon, I think are so important for, particularly for the environment our students are working in right now, and trying to find those opportunities for them. The eco-anxiety and social justice issues are so important that as educators, we need to be addressing those, to a greater extent. And these are certainly wonderful resources to provide that link for teachers to get started, because it's a topic that's hard to get started on if it's not something that you've done previously with your students. So these are amazing resources. And the other thing I just wanted to thank you, Jennifer, is that you always give resources that are free for teachers, because that's a huge part of getting started. Sometimes, you go to a site and you have to subscribe to something, and then you have to, click on all of these links. So thank you so much for making sure that all of your resources are freely accessible.
Yeah, I hope one day I don't get into trouble for that. I mean, I wear so many different hats, right? That I'm really cognizant of being careful with what I share and how I share, but I just feel really strongly that this is my way of giving back to the environment and to other educators in a long career in environmental and outdoor education. I have a quick question. Sheila, which faculty do you work for?
Ontario Tech in Oshawa.
Oh, okay, wonderful.
Yep.
Thank you so much for having me, and everybody, thank you for attending. And if you have any questions, my contact information is in the presentation.
And one final note, I'm just going to remind everybody that there is the Eco Expo. I'm practicing that. Eco Expo Network that happens between 5 and 7 this evening. And then there are other sessions at 7 o'clock. So hopefully you have found some other sessions that you would like to go to at 7 o'clock, but check out those networking booths between 5 and 7 this evening. So lots of the sponsors and environmental organizations that we work with. And otherwise, thank you again. And thank you, Laura, for your assistance with the presentation. So you can actually stop sharing now. Right. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.